Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever thought about it like this? It's like the dating game is less like finding a partner and more like a demolition derby, You
Mhm.
get out there and it's like, bam, left with bruises and questions like, is the one even real?
It is kind of wild how many of us, when we start dating, we're like low-key hoping the other person will just like make us complete, like solve all our problems. Like there's some magic puzzle piece.
And so that brings us to Stephen Chandler's relationship roadmap, right? This
Right.
book, it says, forget that missing puzzle piece idea, right? Instead, it's about you becoming a whole person, someone who's actually ready for a real relationship, a God-centered one.
Exactly. Chandler's like, toss out that old dating playbook. The real work. It starts way before you even think about like swiping right.
Okay, so break this down for me. Are you saying instead of like frantically searching for the one,
Mhm.
we should be working on ourselves first?
That's the heart of it. Chandler calls it being whole in Christ. What that means is like dealing with past hurts, working through your insecurities and getting right with God
Okay.
before you bring someone else into the mix.
So it's like laying a good foundation before building a house,
hmm
right? Got it. But what's this whole pre-date preparation actually look like in real life?
Chandler gets down to the nitty gritty. He talks about taking a hard look at your emotional baggage, maybe seeking healing for some past wounds, and even like getting your finances straight. It's about owning your stuff, becoming self-aware and responsible, not expecting a partner to come in and fix everything.
There's like a total 180 from that typical dating advice,
Yeah.
all about attracting someone else. Chandler's like, nope, go deep inside first.
He is, and he uses this awesome analogy. He compares it to a car needing regular tune-ups, right? To run smooth. We need those tune-ups too, spiritual and emotional ones. Let God work on us.
Love that. So it's not just about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person, right? But okay, so your internal engine is humming. Now what? How do you meet people? Chandler's not saying just sit around and wait for love to like fall in your lap, is he?
No way. He says, put out jars. Like that story in 2 Kings, the widow, right? Remember, she's about to lose everything. The prophet Elisha tells her, gather as many empty jars as you can. Then he says, pour in that little bit of oil you have left. And what happens? That oil, it miraculously multiplies, fills all the jars. She sells it and pays off her debts.
Yeah, pretty amazing story. But I got to ask, what's the dating connection? What do those jars actually like represent in relationships?
Think of them as opportunities to connect with people who get you, who share your values. It could be church or volunteering, maybe a hobby group, or even just being open to chatting at a coffee shop. It's about making space for God to move, but also, actually putting yourself out there.
So don't limit yourself, right? Explore different jars, so to speak. Be open to different possibilities. It's like Chandler's pushing for a more, I don't know, proactive kind of dating, and one where faith is a big part of it.
Totally. He's like, ditch that wait for God to drop someone in your lap thing. Be more intentional.
No, that's refreshing. It's like you have the power, right? But faith is still key. But okay, say you're out there meeting people. How do you figure out who's worth, actually pursuing? Chandler's big on the whole God-centered thing. So what are his criteria?
Oh, he has them. And first he's like, let's bust some dating myths, like that rigid checklist everyone has, those must-have qualities. He says, scrap it.
Yeah, that infamous checklist. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so no checklist. What should we be looking for instead of all those like superficial things?
He says, shift away from those external things. Look for the deeper stuff, like character, shared values, and a big one, are you guys spiritually compatible? He's not saying looks don't matter, but they shouldn't be the main thing.
So it's like go beyond the surface, right? Find a connection that goes deeper, beyond just like shared interests or chemistry, a more, I don't know, holistic kind of compatibility.
Yes. He even calls out that whole soulmate myth. He says it sets people up to be disappointed, always searching for that one perfect person.
Interesting. So if it's not about finding your like preordained soulmate, what is it about?
Chandler says, sure, falling in love is powerful, but it doesn't mean you're actually compatible long term. He says what really matters is having shared goals, willingness to grow together, and of course, that shared faith foundation.
So it's not about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone who complements you, and pushes you to grow, both as a person and as a couple. But how do you even know if you're truly compatible? Is it just a gut feeling, or are there like more objective signs?
That's where Chandler brings in community. He's like, don't date in a bubble. Get advice from people you trust. friends, mentors, people who can be objective. They're like, your wise advisors, right? In your corner, helping you navigate all the like relationship stuff and seeing things maybe you don't. When you're like caught up in that new relationship excitement, they can spot those red flags or those blind spots you miss.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you need someone like outside the situation
Yeah.
to give you that reality check,
Yeah.
keep you grounded. But okay, what if they say something you don't want to hear? Like their advice and your heart are saying different things.
Yeah.
What does Chandler say about that whole like personal feelings versus wise counsel thing?
Oh, he tackles that head on. He's like, yeah, accepting advice can be tough, especially when it goes against what you want. But he says, listen to those trusted people. Even if you don't like what they're saying, submit to their no, even if you want to say yes. He's big on humility, like realizing we don't always see things clearly,
Yeah.
especially when, emotions are involved.
So it's like find that balance, right? Yeah. Between what your gut says and what people who know you well are saying. Trust the process. Be open to feedback, even when it's hard. But okay, let's say you've done the inner work, talked to your people, and found someone who seems, compatible. What does Chandler say about actually dating? Does he have like a roadmap for those first interactions?
He does. He breaks it down into stages. First, he says, spy out the land. Now, he doesn't mean like stalk them online, but observe them, in their natural habitat. How do they treat others? What's their character like? Where are they headed in life?
It's like the research phase, right? Before you invest in something, you're gathering intel, getting a sense of who they really are before you jump into anything serious. Way better than like going on blind dates based on a profile pic.
Totally. It's about being smart, not rushing things. Then comes the talking stage. This is where you keep it light, fun conversations, see if you're on the same page, values-wise. Explore some common interests. Get a feel for their personalities. See if there's like a natural spark.
So you're testing the waters.
Yeah.
Right. Before you dive in head first. Seeing if there's enough there to like keep going.
Yeah.
But when does the actual dating happen? Where's that in Chandler's plan?
He calls that the dating stage. Now, the conversations go deeper, you share experiences, and you start to figure out if you're really compatible long term. This is when you talk about big picture stuff, like where are you headed in life? How do you handle conflict? Do your values really line up?
Okay, now things are getting real. You're past the surface stuff, really getting to know each other. But even here, Chandler says to pace yourself right.
Right.
It's not like a few good dates and you're rushing to commit.
Nope. He is all about taking it slow, being intentional. Keep talking to your trusted people, too. And if all goes well, you get to the engagement stage. This isn't just about rings and venues, though. It's about, like, intentionally building that foundation for marriage, premarital counseling, talking about potential issues, learning, relationship skills.
It's like training for a marathon, right? Not just sprinting to the finish line. Marriage is a journey, not just a destination. It's interesting. Chandler talks a lot about opposite-sex friendships. Why do you think that's such a big focus for him?
He knows they can be tricky, especially when you're looking for a romantic relationship. He's all about clear boundaries, so things don't get messy, no mixed signals. He even tells this story, like a cautionary tale, about a friendship that went south. Shows how blurry lines can lead to trouble.
I'd love to hear about that story, but first I got to ask, what about that whole men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing?
Yeah.
Does Chandler like buy into those stereotypes, or is his take on, differences between men and women more, nuanced?
Chandler's like full on into the whole God designed differences thing. He celebrates them, pulls examples from the Bible, and he's big on how like men and women complement each other, especially in a family.
So he's not saying like erase the differences. It's more about embracing them.
Right.
Seeing how they can make a relationship stronger. It's about recognizing what each person brings to the table. Not about like limiting anyone or setting up these rigid expectations.
Exactly. It's like you each have unique gifts, perspectives, and you work together, create a partnership that's like harmonious, fulfilling. And speaking of, things that can get controversial, Chandler doesn't shy away from the whole submission thing in relationships. How does he handle that? It can be a touchy subject, right?
For sure. People have strong opinions about submission.
Yeah.
Especially these days. How does Chandler like navigate those waters?
He puts it in the context of like mutual respect, service. He's not saying one person's the boss. He even flips it around and says men have this huge responsibility too to lay down their lives for their wives like Christ did for the church.
Wow, that's a powerful image. So it's not about one person being like subservient. It's about both people choosing to serve each other, putting the other person first. That's a challenge to like that whole love is selfish idea.
He says that selflessness, it leads to more fulfillment, more joy. But Chandler's not just talking theory here. He gets into, like, the nitty-gritty of those important conversations before marriage, even the uncomfortable ones, like finances, past relationships.
So important. A lot of couples skip those conversations, but they're key to building a solid foundation.
Mhm.
So what does Chandler say are like the must-have conversations before you say, I do?
He's big on aligning your faith, and this goes way beyond, like, going to the same church. It's about those deeper questions. What do you believe? What are your values? How's your relationship with God? You got to be on the same page spiritually. That shared faith, it's the bedrock of your relationship.
It's like making sure your spiritual compasses are pointing the same way. You don't want to be headed in opposite directions when it comes to like something as important as your faith.
But Chandler doesn't stop there, right? He also says, talk about your sexual history. Yeah. Now, that one can be tough. But he says it builds trust. You understand each other's experiences, what they might be sensitive about. It's about realizing everyone has a past and approaching that conversation with, kindness, grace.
Yeah, that's definitely one a lot of people would probably rather avoid. But I can see how it could prevent like misunderstandings later on.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't talk about pre-marriage stuff without talking about money.
Absolutely. Chandler says, get those financial values and habits out in the open. That's a huge source of conflict in marriage. So, talk about your goals, your spending habits, how you handle money.
Get on the same page financially before you combine bank accounts. No surprises later, no secret credit card debt hiding. But it's not just about the practical stuff like budgeting and saving.
Right. It's about what are your values when it comes to money? What's important to you? Are you all about experiences or stuff? Do you believe in giving back? Talk about it.
This is all making so much sense. Chandler's approach is like looking at the whole picture, right?
Mhm.
Not just the romantic part, but the practical stuff, the spiritual foundation, all the things that make a relationship healthy and strong.
And to wrap it all up, he says, dating is like a road trip with a destination. He's like, shift your focus. It's not just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person.
Love that analogy. It's
Yeah.
about having that shared vision, working together, navigating all those bumps in the road. But it's also about taking responsibility for like your own growth, becoming the kind of person who's ready for a real healthy relationship.
Exactly. He says when you focus on growing, on maturing spiritually, on living a life that's like aligned with God's purpose, you attract healthy relationships. It's not about checking boxes or finding someone to complete you. It's about being the best you and trusting that the right person will be drawn to that. It's tough though, right? Shifting that focus, looking inward, like, hey, I have a part to play in this, not just waiting for that like perfect person to magically appear. But Sandler says when we do that work, on ourselves, we deal with our stuff, we align our lives with like what God wants, we become, well, magnets for those healthy relationships.
So it's not about settling or lowering your standards. It's more like raising your own bar,
Yeah.
becoming the best version of you. And then someone who's also on that path,
Right.
will be drawn to that.
Exactly. And it all goes back to, remember, being whole in Christ. It's about finding your identity, your security in God, not in another person.
That's so key. When you're already whole, you're not looking for someone to like fill a hole or fix you. You're coming to the relationship, strong, self-aware, ready to give and to grow with someone who's doing the same.
It's two whole people coming together,
Yeah.
not two halves trying to become one. I think that's what makes Chandler's approach so, I don't know, different. And it works.
It definitely like challenges that whole fairy tale thing,
Yeah.
right? Finding your other half. But it's way more realistic and empowering too.
And it shows you how important it is to be responsible for yourself before the relationship and during it too.
This has been so insightful, this deep dive into Stephen Chandler's relationship roadmap. We've covered so much, from preparing for dating to those opposite sex friendships to like understanding what makes men and women different. And of course, those super important conversations to have before marriage.
It's been great exploring this stuff with you. Chandler's book is like packed with wisdom. Everyone should check it out. Seriously, especially if you're looking for a relationship, one that honors God.
And it's not just for single people. Even if you're already in a relationship, there's a lot to learn here about communication, handling conflict, how to keep that connection strong. So as we wrap up, here's something to think about. What if we all focused on becoming the right person instead of just looking for them? How would that change our relationships?
We want to hear from you.
Tell us what resonated with you. down in the comments. And if you like this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it. Until next time, keep those relationship engines running smooth.